Sam's life, built meticulously over a decade, began unraveling on a quiet Tuesday evening. The kind of evening where the mundane felt comforting. He had just returned from work, exhausted but content, ready to spend the night with his wife, Leah, and their 4-year-old son, Jamie. The house was still as he walked in, the kind of quiet that unsettled him because Jamie was usually a bundle of energy at this hour. "Leah," he called, his voice echoing in the modest 2-story house. There was no answer. He found Jamie in the living room, sitting on the floor with his favorite dinosaur toys scattered around. Relief washed over Sam as he knelt beside his son. "Hey, buddy, where's Mom?" Jamie looked up, his wide brown eyes brimming with innocence. "She went to Mr. Thompson's house. She said she'll be back soon." Sam froze. Mr. Thompson was their neighbor, recently divorced man in his late 30s. They weren't close, but he had always seemed polite, if somewhat aloof. Sam's heart skipped as doubt crept into his mind. Did she say why she went over there? Jamie shrugged, his little hands fiddling with a toy triceratops. "Nope, but she told me to stay here and not touch the stove." Sam's chest tightened. He pulled out his phone and dialed Leah. It rang twice before going to voicemail. He tried again, with the same result. Anxiety began gnawing at him. He glanced at Jamie. "Stay here, okay? Daddy's just going to check on something." The evening air was crisp as Sam walked down the street, each step accompanied by a sense of dread. He reached Mr. Thompson's house and saw Leah's car parked in the driveway. The sight made his stomach churn. He debated knocking on the door, but a mix of fear and pride held him back. Instead, he walked around the house, his heart thundering. The blinds in one of the windows were slightly open, and against every ounce of his better judgment, he peered in. The scene inside made his breath catch. Leah was there, sitting far too close to Mr. Thompson on the couch, her hand resting on his knee. Their laughter floated through the glass, carefree and intimate in a way that Sam hadn't seen in years. It was the kind of laugh she used to share with him. Sam staggered back, a mix of anger and disbelief surging through him. He felt like a fool standing there, witnessing a betrayal that cut deeper than he thought possible. He wanted to storm in, to demand answers, but instead, he pulled out his phone. The camera app opened almost on instinct, and his trembling hands recorded the moment. He didn't know why he did it. Perhaps it was a desperate attempt to make sense of the madness. When he returned home, Jamie was still on the floor, engrossed in his toys. Sam collapsed into a chair, staring blankly at the walls of the home he'd worked so hard to build for his family. His mind raced with questions, each one more painful than the last. How long had this been going on? Was it a one-time mistake or something deeper? And most hauntingly, why hadn't he seen it coming? Sam clenched his fists, a steely resolve taking root. He had spent his life being patient, forgiving, and accommodating. But this was too much. Leah had made her choice, and Sam would make his. This wasn't just about a marriage falling apart. This was about respect, about dignity, about standing up for himself and his son. He had always believed in second chances, but betrayal like this demanded consequences. The road ahead was murky, but one thing was certain. Sam wouldn't let Leah destroy the life they had built without a fight. The morning sun brought no solace to Sam. Sleep had evaded him, leaving him to stew in a storm of emotions. Anger, sadness, betrayal, and confusion. By the time the first rays of light filtered through the curtains, he had made a decision. He wasn't going to confront Leah. Not yet. He needed answers first, and more importantly, he needed leverage. Sam had never been the kind of man to act impulsively. His career as a project manager had taught him that success came through careful planning and execution. He would approach this like any other problem, methodically and with precision. Leah walked into the kitchen later than usual, her hair hastily tied back and her expression slightly guarded. "Morning," she said, her tone too casual. Sam forced a smile. "Morning. Did you sleep well?" "Yeah," she said quickly, her eyes darting to the coffee machine as she poured herself a cup. She didn't ask about his night, and he didn't offer. The silence that stretched between them was heavy with unspoken truths. "Where were you last night?" Sam finally asked, keeping his voice even. Leah's hand paused mid-stir, the spoon clinking against the ceramic mug. "Oh, want to check on Mr. Thompson. He said he was having trouble with his internet and thought I could help. You know, since I'm good with tech stuff." Sam's stomach churned at her easy lie, but he didn't let it show. "That's thoughtful of you. Next time, just let me know, so I'm not worried." She nodded, her smile too bright to be genuine. "Of course. Sorry about that." Sam let the matter drop for now, but the wheels in his mind were already turning. He needed proof, something undeniable. The video he'd taken last night was a start, but it wasn't enough. If he was going to confront Leah, it would be on his terms, with irrefutable evidence. Later that day, during his lunch break, Sam made a discreet call to a private investigator. It felt like a step he'd never imagined taking, something out of a bad movie. But this was his reality now, and he had to protect himself and Jamie. "Mr. Harris," the investigator's voice was calm and professional. "I can assist you with this. We'll need to gather photographic evidence, phone records, and any financial discrepancies. It's best to stay calm and let us handle the details." Sam agreed, his resolve hardening. As much as he wanted to confront Leah and demand answers, he understood the value of patience. This wasn't just about catching her in a lie. It was about securing his future and Jamie's. Leah had crossed a line, and he wouldn't let her walk away unscathed. That evening, Sam went about his routine as if nothing was wrong. He played with Jamie, cooked dinner, and even laughed at one of Jamie's silly jokes. But beneath the surface, he was a man preparing for battle. Leah, for her part, seemed uneasy. Her usual ease had been replaced by a subtle nervousness. She was distracted during dinner, her eyes flicking to her phone more than once. Sam didn't say anything, but he noticed. After Jamie was tucked into bed, Sam settled into the living room with his laptop, pretending to work. Leah joined him, scrolling through her phone. The silence was almost suffocating. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice tentative. Sam looked up, feigning surprise. "Yeah, why wouldn't I be?" She shrugged, forcing a smile. "You've just been quiet today." He smiled back, a practiced gesture that didn't reach his eyes. "Just a lot on my mind." As Leah returned to her phone, Sam studied her from the corner of his eye. He could see the tension in her posture, the way she bit her lip as she typed. Was she messaging Thompson right now? The thought made his blood boil, but he swallowed the anger. This wasn't the time to act. It was the time to observe, to gather, to prepare. By the time Leah went to bed, Sam had already begun piecing together his plan. The private investigator would start surveillance the next day. Sam would begin checking their financial records, looking for anything unusual, and he would keep a watchful eye on Leah, noting every suspicious move. He didn't know how long it would take, but he was willing to wait. Leah had betrayed him, but she had underestimated him. Sam might have been blindsided, but he wasn't weak. If Leah thought she could destroy their family and walk away unscathed, she was about to learn how wrong she was. The next few days passed in a blur of routine and pretense. Sam played the part of the devoted husband while his mind churned with plans. Each moment felt like a balancing act between keeping Leah unaware of his suspicions and gathering the evidence he needed. Leah's behavior grew more erratic, though she tried to hide it. She spent more time on her phone, often slipping out of the room to take calls or text. Her excuses for leaving the house were flimsy: grocery shopping, meeting a friend, going for a walk. Sam said nothing, but each excuse added fuel to his resolve. One evening, as they sat watching a show, Leah's phone buzzed with a notification. She glanced at the screen and quickly flipped the phone face down on the coffee table. Sam didn't react outwardly, but his stomach twisted. The name on the screen had been Mike, Mr. Thompson's first name. He waited until Leah went to bed before retrieving her phone from the table. He knew her passcode. It was Jamie's birth date. It took every ounce of willpower not to let his hands shake as he unlocked the device. Her messages confirmed what he already suspected. Threads with Mike were filled with flirtatious banter, plans for their next meeting, and even a few photos that made Sam's jaw tighten in anger. One message stood out among the rest. "Last night was amazing. Can't wait to see you again." Sam took screenshots of everything, forwarding them to his own phone before locking hers and placing it back on the table. He sat in the dark for a long time, staring at the evidence on his screen. He had known, deep down, but seeing it in black and white made it feel real in a way that crushed him. The private investigator's updates arrived the next day. Photos of Leah entering and leaving Thompson's house, timestamps proving she had spent hours there. The investigator had even captured them together on a park bench, her head resting on Thompson's shoulder. Sam stared at the photos, his chest tightening. Leah wasn't just cheating. She was building a life with this man. The weight of it settled heavily on him. He felt like a stranger in his own marriage, an outsider in his own home. Later that evening, Sam sat at the kitchen table with Jamie, helping him build a block tower. Jamie's giggles were a balm to Sam's battered heart, a reminder of what truly mattered. He couldn't let Leah's betrayal destroy Jamie's world. "Daddy, look!" Jamie exclaimed, pointing to the wobbling tower. "It's so tall." Sam smiled, ruffling his son's hair. "It's amazing, buddy. You're a great builder." As Jamie played, Sam's mind raced. He had gathered enough evidence to confirm Leah's affair, but the question remained. What now? Confrontation seemed inevitable, but it wasn't just about anger or revenge. It was about protecting Jamie, about ensuring their future wasn't ruined by Leah's choices. For the first time in days, Sam let himself imagine the confrontation. He pictured Leah's face when he presented her with the evidence, the excuses she would undoubtedly make, the crocodile tears she might shed. Would she beg for forgiveness? Or would she run straight into Thompson's arms? Either way, Sam knew he had to stay strong, for himself and for Jamie. Leah had made her choices, and now it was time for Sam to make his. As he tucked Jamie into bed that night, Sam kissed his son's forehead and whispered, "No matter what happens, I'll always take care of you. I promise." The words felt like a vow, one he intended to keep. Upstairs, Leah was already asleep, her face serene in the dim light of their bedroom. Sam stood in the doorway for a moment, studying her. She looked like the woman he had fallen in love with all those years ago, but the illusion had been shattered. She was a stranger now, and Sam wasn't sure if he could ever see her the same way again. With a heavy heart, he turned away and walked to his office. The evidence he'd gathered was neatly organized on his computer. Photos, messages, timestamps, all ready to be used if needed. He stared at the screen for a long time, knowing that the confrontation was coming. Sam didn't know what the next day would bring, but one thing was certain. He wasn't going to let Leah's betrayal break him. Sam woke early the next morning, the weight of the previous night's discoveries still heavy on his chest. The evidence sat on his computer, damning and undeniable. It was enough to end the marriage, but Sam knew this wasn't just about exposing Leah's betrayal. It was about ensuring that when the dust settled, Jamie's world would remain intact. Leah was still asleep when Sam left the house to meet with his lawyer, Emily Rivers. She had come highly recommended, known for her strategic mind and no-nonsense approach. Sam entered her sleek office downtown, clutching a folder containing the evidence he'd collected. Emily gestured for him to sit, her sharp eyes taking in his tense posture. "I've gone through the information you emailed me, Mr. Harris," she began, sliding a stack of documents across her desk. "You've done your homework." Sam nodded, his throat tight. "I had to. This isn't just about me. It's about my son." Emily leaned forward, her tone softening. "I understand. And with the evidence you have, you're in a strong position. We can pursue full custody if that's your goal." Sam hesitated. He didn't want to tear Jamie away from Leah completely. Despite her betrayal, she was still Jamie's mother, and he couldn't imagine denying his son the chance to have both parents in his life. But he also couldn't ignore the way Leah had endangered their family's stability. "I want primary custody," Sam said finally. "Jamie needs consistency, and I can give him that. Leah can have visitation rights, but I want to make sure he's protected." Emily nodded, jotting down notes. "Understood." With the evidence of the affair and her negligence, leaving Jamie alone to visit her lover, we have a strong case. I'll prepare the custody petition and start drafting the divorce papers. The conversation turned to logistics, dividing assets, the possibility of alimony, and the timeline for filing. By the time Sam left Emily's office, he felt a small measure of control returning to his life. The battle ahead would be difficult, but he was ready. That evening, Sam watched Leah closely as they sat down for dinner. She was unusually cheerful, chatting about her day as if nothing had changed. It made his stomach turn, knowing the truth of where she had been and who she had been with. "Jamie, don't forget to eat your vegetables," Leah said, pointing to the untouched broccoli on his plate. Jamie wrinkled his nose. "But they're yucky." Sam chuckled softly, ruffling Jamie's hair. "You heard your mom, buddy. Big and strong, remember?" Leah smiled at Sam, and for a fleeting moment, the warmth in her eyes looked genuine. It almost made him second-guess his plan. Almost. After dinner, as Leah cleared the dishes, Sam's phone buzzed with a text from the private investigator. "New footage sent to your email. Includes today's activities." He didn't need to open it to know what it would show. Leah had become predictable in her deceit. When Jamie was asleep, Sam turned to Leah in the living room. She was scrolling through her phone, her brow furrowed in concentration. Sam cleared his throat, and she looked up, startled. "Can we talk?" he asked. Leah's expression shifted, a flicker of unease crossing her face. "Sure. What's on your mind?" Sam sat across from her, his hands clasped tightly together. He felt the weight of everything he wanted to say pressing down on him, but he forced himself to remain calm. "I know about you and Mike," he said quietly. Leah froze, her phone slipping from her hand onto the couch. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice wavering. Sam pulled out his phone, opening the folder with the photos and messages. He handed it to her without a word. Her face paled as she scrolled through the evidence. Her lips parted as if to speak, but no words came out. Finally, she whispered, "How did you—" "It doesn't matter how," Sam interrupted, his voice steady but cold. "What matters is that you've been lying to me, to Jamie. You've been sneaking around, putting your desires above your family." Tears welled in Leah's eyes, but Sam refused to let them sway him. "Sam, it wasn't supposed to." "Spare me the excuses," he said, cutting her off. "You made your choice. Now, I'm making mine." He stood, looking down at her with a mixture of anger and sorrow. "I've already spoken to a lawyer. I'll be filing for divorce, and I'm seeking primary custody of Jamie." Leah's tears turned into quiet sobs. "Please, Sam," she begged. "It was a mistake. I didn't mean for this to happen." Sam shook his head, his voice firm. "You didn't mean to get caught. That's the only thing you regret." He turned and walked upstairs, leaving Leah sobbing on the couch. As he entered Jamie's room, the sight of his son sleeping peacefully reminded him of what was at stake. Sam kissed Jamie's forehead and whispered, "Everything's going to be okay." For the first time in weeks, Sam felt a sense of clarity. Leah's betrayal had shaken him to his core, but it hadn't broken him. He would fight for Jamie, for their future, and for the life they deserved. The morning after the confrontation was eerily silent. Leah stayed in the guest room, the muffled sound of her crying seeping through the closed door. Sam felt no satisfaction in it. Despite her betrayal, a part of him still mourned the woman he thought she was, the partner he had once trusted with his life. Jamie's laughter was the only thing that brought a semblance of normalcy to the house. Sam focused all his energy on his son, determined to shield him from the chaos swirling beneath the surface. At breakfast, Leah joined them, her face pale and her eyes red-rimmed. She moved stiffly, avoiding Sam's gaze as she poured a bowl of cereal for Jamie. "Daddy, can we go to the park today?" Jamie asked, his voice brimming with excitement. Sam smiled at him, ruffling his hair. "Of course, buddy. We'll head out after breakfast." Jamie turned to Leah. "Mommy, are you coming too?" Leah froze, her spoon halfway to her mouth. Her gaze flicked to Sam, who watched her with a guarded expression. I can't today, sweetheart," Leah said softly. "I have something to do." Jamie pouted, but Sam quickly intervened. "That's okay, champ. It'll be our special day." Leah's face crumpled slightly at Jamie's eager nod, but she didn't argue. After breakfast, Sam gathered Jamie's things and headed to the park, leaving Leah alone with her guilt. As Jamie played on the swings, Sam sat on a nearby bench, lost in thought. His phone buzzed with an email notification from Emily Rivers. The subject line read, "Custody petition drafted. Next steps." Sam opened the email, skimming through the details. Emily had included a timeline for filing the petition and serving Leah with divorce papers. Her tone was professional but firm. This was the beginning of a battle Sam couldn't afford to lose. "Push me higher, Daddy," Jamie called, his voice cutting through Sam's thoughts. He smiled, slipping his phone into his pocket as he joined Jamie at the swings. For the next hour, Sam let himself forget about Leah, Mike, and the legal storm brewing on the horizon. Jamie's joy was a reminder of why Sam was fighting so hard to give his son a stable, loving home. When they returned home, Leah was waiting in the living room, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. She looked up as they entered, her eyes pleading. "Sam," she began, her voice trembling. "Can we talk?" Sam ushered Jamie upstairs to play before returning to face Leah. He stood across the room, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. "What is it?" he asked. Leah hesitated, her fingers twisting together. "I know I messed up. I've been a terrible wife, and I don't expect you to forgive me. But please don't take Jamie away from me." Sam's jaw tightened. "You took yourself away from Jamie when you started sneaking around. He deserves a parent who puts him first, not one who abandons him to run to their lover." "I was wrong," she said, her voice breaking. "But I love Jamie, and I want to be in his life. I'll do whatever it takes to make things right." Sam's eyes narrowed. "What's right is making sure Jamie has the stability he needs. That's what I'm fighting for. If you care about him as much as you say, you'll put his needs above your own." Leah's tears spilled over, but Sam's resolve didn't waver. He had given her everything, his trust, his love, his commitment, and she had thrown it away. Now, he owed her nothing but the truth. "I'll let my lawyer handle the details," Sam said, turning toward the stairs. "Until then, I suggest you start figuring out what your priorities really are." Upstairs, Sam found Jamie sprawled on the floor, building a tower with his blocks. His son looked up and grinned, oblivious to the tension crackling through the house. "Look, Daddy, it's taller than me." Sam knelt beside Jamie, marveling at his resilience. No matter how hard things got, Jamie deserved a father who would protect him at all costs. As Sam helped rebuild the tower, he thought about what lay ahead. The custody battle, the divorce proceedings, and the fallout from Leah's choices would be brutal. But Sam wasn't afraid. He had spent his life being patient, but now it was time to be strong. Leah had made her bed. Now she would lie in it. The tension in the house became palpable in the days that followed. Leah was subdued, her once vibrant energy dulled by the weight of her guilt. She tiptoed around Sam and Jamie, her attempts to bridge the widening gap between her and Sam met with cold indifference. Sam, for his part, remained steadfast. His lawyer had filed the custody petition, and the divorce papers were being finalized. He had decided to serve Leah with both at once, a decisive move that would leave no room for negotiation. Leah tried to mend fences, but her efforts felt hollow. She insisted on cooking dinner one evening, preparing one of Sam's favorite meals. As the smell of baked lasagna filled the house, she approached him cautiously, her hands trembling as she set the table. "Sam," she began hesitantly, "I know I can't undo what I've done, but I'd like to try to make things better. For Jamie's sake." Sam looked at her, his expression unreadable. "It's a little late for that." Leah flinched but pressed on. "I'll do anything. Counseling, therapy, whatever it takes. I just want to keep our family together." "Our family fell apart the moment you decided to sneak around with Mike," Sam said evenly. "And it wasn't just me you betrayed, it was Jamie too." Leah's eyes filled with tears, but Sam didn't waver. The days of giving her the benefit of the doubt were over. She had made her choices, and now she had to face the consequences. That night, after Jamie was in bed, Sam received another update from the private investigator. It included footage of Leah meeting Mike at a coffee shop that afternoon. They sat in a secluded corner, their heads bent close together as they whispered to each other. Sam watched the video with a grim sense of finality. Leah's promises to make things right were nothing but empty words. She was still seeing Mike, still prioritizing her selfish desires over her family. The next morning, Sam woke early, leaving Leah and Jamie still asleep as he made his way downtown. He stopped by Emily Rivers' office, where she greeted him with a satisfied nod. "Everything's ready," Emily said, sliding a stack of documents across her desk. "The custody petition and divorce papers will be served this afternoon. Once she's notified, the ball will be in her court." Sam studied the documents, his resolve hardening. "And you're sure this gives me the best chance of keeping Jamie?" Emily's expression softened. "With the evidence you've gathered, you're in a strong position. The courts will prioritize Jamie's well-being, and you've demonstrated that you're the more stable parent." Sam nodded, his jaw tightening. "Then let's do it." When Sam returned home, Leah was waiting for him in the living room. She looked anxious, her hands wringing as she stood to greet him. "Where were you?" she asked, her tone more accusatory than she likely intended. Sam met her gaze, his expression cool. "Running errands." Leah frowned, clearly sensing his distance. "You've been so distant lately. I know I've hurt you, but can we please just talk?" Sam crossed his arms, his voice calm but firm. "We'll talk soon enough." Before Leah could respond, there was a knock at the door. Sam's stomach churned as he watched her walk to answer it. A courier stood on the porch, holding an envelope with her name on it. Leah hesitated, glancing back at Sam before taking the envelope. As she opened it, her face went pale. Her hands trembled as she flipped through the documents. First the custody petition, then the divorce papers. "Sam," she whispered, her voice barely audible. You're divorcing me?" He stood across the room, his posture resolute. "What did you think was going to happen, Leah? That I'd just forgive you? Let you keep tearing this family apart?" Tears streamed down her face as she clutched the papers. "I told you I'd do anything to fix this." Sam's voice hardened. "Except the one thing that matters, putting your family first. You had your chance, Leah. This is the result of your choices." Leah collapsed onto the couch, her sobs filling the silence. Sam felt a pang of guilt, but he quickly pushed it aside. This wasn't about punishing Leah. It was about protecting Jamie and himself from the damage she had caused. As Sam walked upstairs to check on Jamie, he felt a sense of grim determination settle over him. The hardest part was over. Now, it was time to fight for his son and the future they both deserved. Leah's sobs echoed through the house long after Sam left the living room. Jamie, oblivious to the turmoil brewing between his parents, played happily in his room, the sound of his toys clinking together a stark contrast to the tension below. Sam stayed with Jamie as long as he could, keeping his tone light and playful despite the storm brewing in his chest. When Leah finally came upstairs, her eyes were red, and her face was pale. "We need to talk," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Sam glanced at Jamie, who was absorbed in his game, and nodded. "Downstairs." Once they were seated in the kitchen, Leah placed the stack of papers on the table between them. Her hands trembled as she looked up at him. "How did we get here, Sam?" Her question, laden with desperation, made Sam's jaw tighten. "You tell me, Leah. How does a wife end up sneaking off to the neighbor's house while her child is left alone? How does she justify lying for weeks, maybe months, about who she really is?" Leah's tears began anew, but Sam's patience was threadbare. "You can cry all you want," he said, his voice cold. "It doesn't change what you did." "I made a mistake," Leah pleaded, her voice cracking. "A terrible, selfish mistake, but I didn't think it would. I didn't think it would destroy everything." Sam leaned forward, his eyes locked on hers. "You didn't think it would destroy everything because you didn't think you'd get caught. You thought I'd stay in the dark while you played house with Mike. But guess what, Leah? You don't get to have it both ways." Leah flinched at his words but didn't argue. She knew the truth was undeniable, the evidence in her own hands damning her. After a long silence, she whispered, "What happens now?" Sam's response was immediate. "We go to court. I'll fight for primary custody of Jamie. You can have visitation rights, but he deserves stability, and I intend to give him that." Leah shook her head, her tears turning to quiet anger. "You can't take him away from me. I'm still his mother." "Being his mother didn't stop you from leaving him alone so you could see Mike," Sam shot back, his voice rising. "Being his mother didn't stop you from tearing this family apart. So don't lecture me about what I can and can't do." Leah opened her mouth to retort but stopped short, her shoulders slumping in defeat. She buried her face in her hands, sobbing quietly as Sam stood and walked away. The next few days passed in a haze of cold civility. Leah moved through the house like a shadow, her interactions with Jamie tinged with guilt. Sam stayed firm, focusing on his son and the steps ahead. He met with Emily regularly, discussing the details of the custody case and the divorce proceedings. One evening, Sam received a call from the private investigator. "Mr. Harris," the investigator began, "we've uncovered additional information. It seems your wife and Mike were planning to move in together. There's evidence of them scouting apartments." Sam's stomach dropped. Despite everything, hearing confirmation of Leah's plans to leave their family cut deep. He thanked the investigator and hung up, staring blankly at the wall as the weight of it all bore down on him. The following morning, Sam confronted Leah with the new information. She froze, her face a mask of shock as he laid the documents on the kitchen table. "You weren't just having an affair," Sam said, his voice tight. "You were planning to leave. What was your plan, Leah? To take Jamie with you? Or were you going to leave him behind too?" Leah's face crumpled as she shook her head. I wasn't going to leave Jamie," she stammered. "I swear." "Save it," Sam snapped, his anger boiling over. "You were willing to uproot his life for your own selfishness. You don't get to claim the moral high ground now." Leah sobbed into her hands, but Sam didn't relent. "This isn't about us anymore," he said, his voice firm. "It's about Jamie. He deserves better than this." Leah looked up at him, her tear-streaked face a picture of despair. "What do you want from me?" Sam's answer was simple. "I want you to admit what you've done. Own it. Leah, stop lying to yourself and everyone else." Her silence spoke volumes. Sam turned and walked away, his heart heavy but resolute. That night, as he watched Jamie sleep, Sam made a silent promise. He would see this through to the end. Leah might have broken his trust, but she wouldn't break their son's future. The fight was far from over, but Sam was ready. Leah remained in denial about the depth of the situation. Over the next few days, she attempted to reach out to Sam, desperate to bridge the gap. She pleaded for therapy, suggesting they could work through it for Jamie's sake. Sam, however, saw through her words. Therapy wasn't about Jamie. It was about Leah's desperation to salvage the life she was on the verge of losing. His response was always the same. "The papers are signed. This isn't up for negotiation." Her final attempt came one evening when she brought Jamie downstairs and sat him on the couch between them. "Jamie, Mommy and Daddy need to talk about something important," she began, her voice trembling. Sam's heart sank as he realized her intent. "Leah, don't." She turned to Jamie, ignoring Sam. "Wouldn't you like it if Mommy and Daddy stayed together? If we could all be a happy family again?" Jamie's innocent eyes lit up. "Really? We can?" Sam's jaw clenched, fury boiling beneath the surface. "That's enough, Leah. Don't use him like this." Leah's face fell, but she stayed silent. Sam scooped Jamie into his arms and carried him back to his room, his heart breaking as his son asked, "Why can't we stay together, Daddy?" When he returned, Leah was gone. The papers were still untouched on the kitchen table. The following week, Leah was served with a court date. She reacted with fury, accusing Sam of being heartless and vindictive. "You're ruining Jamie's life," she shouted during one heated argument. "No," Sam countered, his voice cold. "You ruined it when you decided we weren't enough for you." Leah's attempts to undermine Sam intensified. She reached out to mutual friends, trying to garner sympathy, but the evidence Sam had collected left little room for debate. Most of their friends distanced themselves from Leah, unwilling to defend her actions. Sam focused on his preparations for court. Emily guided him through every step, ensuring their case was airtight. Leah's relationship with Mike, her neglect of Jamie, and the damning evidence of her deceit all painted a clear picture. The day of the hearing arrived, and tension filled the courtroom. Leah sat on one side, her lawyer looking grim. Sam sat opposite her, his hands steady despite the storm inside him. Emily presented the evidence meticulously. Photos of Leah's affair, text messages, financial records showing suspicious expenditures, and testimony from the private investigator. Leah's lawyer tried to downplay her actions, framing them as a lapse in judgment. But the evidence was overwhelming. Leah herself broke down on the stand, pleading with the judge. "I love my son," she sobbed. "I made a mistake, but I don't deserve to lose him." Emily's rebuttal was sharp and precise. This case isn't about punishing Mrs. Harris. It's about ensuring Jamie has a stable, loving home. Mr. Harris has demonstrated that he can provide that. Mrs. Harris has shown, through her actions, that she prioritizes her own desires over her son's well-being. The judge deliberated for several agonizing days before delivering the verdict. Sam would have primary custody of Jamie. Leah was granted visitation rights, but under strict supervision. Leah's life crumbled in the aftermath. Mike, facing pressure from his ex-wife and mounting debt, ended their relationship abruptly. Leah found herself isolated, her once comfortable lifestyle gone. She moved into a small apartment, her visits with Jamie a stark reminder of what she had lost. Jamie, though initially confused, adapted quickly to his new routine. Sam made every effort to keep his life stable, surrounding him with love and support. Leah, meanwhile, spiraled into bitterness. She tried to appeal the custody decision but was met with rejection. Her reputation was tarnished, and her former friends wanted nothing to do with her. For Sam, life after divorce wasn't easy, but it was liberating. He poured his energy into his work and being the best father he could be. Jamie's laughter returned, a sound that reassured Sam he had made the right decision. He started therapy, not to reconcile with Leah, but to process the betrayal and move forward. It was in therapy that Sam realized the importance of forgiveness, not for Leah's sake, but for his own. He couldn't let her actions define the rest of his life. 2 years later, Sam's life looked entirely different. Jamie had grown into a happy, confident child. Sam had established a new circle of friends, finding joy in simple moments. One afternoon, while at a local park with Jamie, Sam met a woman named Rachel. She was kind, warm, and patient, qualities that drew Sam in slowly but surely. Their relationship developed at a steady pace, rooted in trust and mutual respect. Leah's life, in contrast, remained stagnant. She worked a low-paying job and lived in a modest apartment, her time with Jamie limited to supervised visits. On one such visit, she watched her son run towards Sam at the end of the day, his face lighting up with joy. As Leah sat alone in the visitation room, a pang of regret washed over her. She had underestimated Sam, mistaking his kindness for weakness. She had thought she could have everything, her family and her affair, without consequence. Now, she understood the depth of her mistake. Sam and Rachel's relationship blossomed into something beautiful. Jamie adored Rachel, and for the first time in years, Sam felt at peace. He had built a new life, one free from the shadows of Leah's betrayal. One evening, as Sam tucked Jamie into bed, his son looked up at him with a sleepy smile. "I love you, Daddy." Sam's heart swelled. "I love you too, buddy. Always." As he left Jamie's room, Sam stood in the hallway for a moment, reflecting on the journey that had brought him here. It had been painful, but it had also shown him his strength. Leah's betrayal had been a turning point, but it didn't define him. He was more than the man she had betrayed. He was a father, a provider, and someone who had reclaimed his life.